Welcome everyone to Wicky's Cricket Podcast. This is episode 12. Welcome to Shane once again.
Hi, Nakul. Thanks for having me. Why do I say thanks for having me on? It's us who record this pod all the time, every time, anyway.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
you're having to earn the right to come on every time. I love it.
yeah,
Well, soon enough we might have a little bit more competition. I was saying to Shane, I think in the last day or so, that a couple of friends of mine in Sydney we're going to start like just a general shit talk sport podcast as well. And we've got some ideas for obviously a BBL Supercoach podcast, and we're getting into BBL season really soon as well. But anyways, more about that later. As always, guys, we're doing a bunch more. Well, so Shane's doing a bunch more analysis on the Wiki socials. Our Discord is slowly starting to get a bit more popular in terms of cricket chat. So if you Google Wiki Linktree, you'll see that and a bunch more of other stuff that Shane will talk through in a little bit. But plan for today is we're going to start off with a little bit of Men's Cricket World Cup, go for about 10-15 minutes there, and then end off with some WBBL analysis and a few points that Shane wanted to bring up. I noticed that my WBBL Renegades are playing at the moment. I saw they were struggling
yeah,
early, but they got to a decent total, so that'll be interesting.
yeah,
How
yeah.
that one plays out.
We'll get to that in a second. Let's actually start off with the Cricket World Cup because, man, so we're recording this on the Thursday, and this is the day after Australia completely completely mauled the Netherlands.
Maxwell played tennis ball
Um,
cricket.
Maxwell played tennis ball cricket, and they won by they won by 305 runs.
Oh my God, I
Just
didn't
even
notice that.
saying that,
Jesus. Yes,
yeah, I mean,
wow.
even saying that figure just sounds so absurd. At one point they looked like they were going to set up for a healthy total, but then Maxwell he just cut loose at the end. They put on 399, the second 399 of this tournament after South Africa, I think.
Yes, I
And
noticed that actually.
they bowled out the Netherlands for 90, completely crushed them. Australia are back. They're back now, and they're coming for that World Cup. And will they get that World Cup?
I love that you mentioned that because hell no, they will not get that World Cup. There's just no way. So my opinion on this is, and I love that you mentioned that because I think the last time you and I had a minor disagreement, and I had the same disagreement with my friends, which was everyone was high on New Zealand, and I was like, why? Like, okay, fine. Like they'd won four and they'd obviously lost none. But like I just don't understand when people like overreact to like it's a 9 game tournament. They've had 4 games. I think they beat England and then a couple of lesser ranked teams or whatever, right? Like people were reacting to New Zealand. And my thing was South Africa genuinely look good from 1 to 11. They're the more well balanced team and they've got a bit more upside. And then since then, obviously South Africa has been dominant. I forgot who they got. Oh, actually no, it was Bangladesh and England. Oh, they manhandled England,
Yeah,
and then they dominated
yeah.
Bangladesh as well. And then now South Africa play who is it? They play Pakistan tomorrow. So they play Pakistan
Tomorrow,
tomorrow.
yeah.
And now it's like, yeah, if South Africa wins again tomorrow, then obviously South Africa will be the new team. But I think just generally people overreact to these things. So I'm going to stay consistent
Hmm.
and say South Africa, aside from India, is the team to beat. And I felt
Yeah.
really vindicated when India, I know it ended up being relatively close, but they were pretty comfortable in the way they took care of New Zealand. I
Hmm.
ended up staying up till like 3 a.m. or 3:30 a.m. I think it was almost
Hmm.
4 a.m. in Sydney when
Yeah.
Virat Kohli unfortunately didn't get
Yeah.
his was it 49th ton, which would have equaled Sachin.
Something like that.
I,
Kind
I
of,
think it was
yeah,
49th
something
ton, so
like
that
that.
was a little bit heartbreaking for Indian fans. But I think if we get I think if you can beat down on a couple of the minnows, you'll get there. You'll get to the 50th one day ton. Hopefully, we'll see
Yeah.
how that goes. But yeah,
Um,
look, been a really fun few days of one day cricket. Sorry, go on.
oh yeah, no, just quickly on the New Zealand thing. They're going to play Australia on Saturday. You're right about you were right about saying that they've had a relative. I think England aside, well, perhaps England included, they had a relatively kind start. And in fairness, they've got the job done. They've won those games. They're in the mix, and I don't think a defeat to India will really bother them that much. The goal was
Fair.
always, well, we have to qualify for the semi-finals first. We need X number of wins. These are the games that we can lose, and our goal with winning all the others is to ensure ourselves against any potential slip ups in the difficult games. And they do look like difficult games now that Australia are back on the horse. New Zealand still have to play South Africa, who are looking really good. And I guess they again, like we've talked about this like back when we were doing the pods during the Ashes, that teams do tend to. I'm sure that teams do tend to budget. I mean, nobody likes to lose, but I'm sure they do budget for a loss. They do
Of
account for,
course.
hey, it's okay. We lost to like India, who are on fire, playing a World Cup at home. That's okay. We're still on course for qualification, and I think that's all that really
Mm.
matters. Heading into, like, let's first qualify, and then let's worry about what our knockout games are and about winning the tournament.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is, I looked at the I really want England to do well. Like they're defending champions. I would love for them to sort of go on a bit of a streak, play some really good cricket, and at least get close. Like I just want that last week before the finals to be competitive. Like every game means something, and even if
Yes.
every game isn't close, like I think the great cricketer, I think it was Higo that mentioned like a really good point that we're so like used to now T20 close games, which might go to the last ball or the second last ball. We forget, and also we remember the 2019 World Cup final, right? We forget
Yep.
that like close one-day finishes might actually just be getting down to the third last over or the second last over, right? Like we
Mm.
can't always expect an epic every time, right? So, anyways, I was hoping England, take care of Sri Lanka and go on a bit of a run, but then Rachel, our new
Mm.
marketing person, reminded me of the last World Cup and Angelo Matthews, 85 not out,
Yes.
Lasith Malinga, um,
Yes.
causing obviously a little bit of an upset with England, obviously at home, and obviously that England went on to win the
Mm.
World Cup, but they did lose to Sri Lanka in the last World Cup. And today, I'm look flat pitch. You would think that England's batting
Mm.
lineup should be able to take care of Sri Lanka, but you just never know. And if they do lose to Sri Lanka, oh my God, the media is going to go absolutely ape shit. So it'll
um,
be interesting to
as
see how it
as
plays out.
yeah, I mean, it's Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka v England is, so there are 10 teams, right? So 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th, 7th versus 8th. This is what's happening today. It's like it's 7th versus 8th in this World Cup. I don't think
Yeah,
it's. You're right in saying that. I guess technically that last qualifying spot is sort of open still. Technically, I don't think it's quite done and dusted yet officially.
mm.
So I guess like England are technically still alive. Um,
Yeah. Well, I've
so
actually got the table in front of me, right? You're right.
hmm,
So it's seventh versus eighth. Realistically, no one's expecting Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, or Netherlands to go on a run. Like, well, they could, but no one's expecting it. So that leaves essentially Australia 6 points plus 1.14, Pakistan 4 points minus zero point 0.4, and England 2 points minus 1.24. So yes, England essentially need to win every game and win handsomely and hope that Australia, who are on two losses at the moment, obviously,
mhm,
slip up and, and lose a couple of games. So, like,
yes.
I definitely am of the opinion that I don't just Pakistan the way that they've played. I just don't see the upside in them to then like they could win, they could
Hmm.
upset one or like a couple of teams, but I just don't see them consecutively winning 3, 4, 5 games. Whereas England, we know that they're capable, they just haven't been able to do it yet, right? So I think like Australia
Hmm.
gets head back, right? And maybe let's just finish up on a bit of Australia chat. So I think the
Yeah.
clear one is that Australia should be able to get Travis Head back for this Saturday. He was apparently like facing bowling and could have played against Netherlands, or at least like he's there. He's in the country. He's been in the nets, and I think they probably just decided to give him a couple more days, right? So that Australian
Hmm.
side with Travis Head back, Smith or Labuschagne, you would assume Labuschagne drops out, but he's obviously been playing reasonably well, so you just don't know. But with Head back in that Aussie lineup, you're thinking, oh wow, like they're definitely a noticeably better side. How do you see it? Do you reckon Australia gets Head back and they sort of come back to the
Um,
tournament Australia, or?
I mean, I think we're already into tournament Australia. This is it. Like they were 1-2 at the start of the tournament. They've got like they got the India game out of the way. I think it was like as weird as it sounds, it's probably good for them to play India first, get that loss out of the way. Um,
Mm.
they now have a pretty much like they now have a tournament defining couple of games coming up. There's New Zealand on Saturday, and then they play England in the next game after that, which is I can't remember when that is, but
It's a few
they
days
do
after
they
next Saturday. They got
yeah,
like 7 day break
right.
as well.
Right. So they play New Zealand and England back to back, but as you said, there's a week's break between them. Head
Mm.
I could see coming in for Green from the team that played yesterday. Um, Head comes in for
Ah,
Green. Head opens. Marsh moves down to three, everybody else goes down one. That's not
No,
great, I know,
Smith,
because
Smith, Smith, and Levishan can't be batting 4 and 5. So, like,
4 and
you're
5,
right.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but how else do you accommodate it? You bat head in the middle, maybe? Are you making best use of him that way?
No, I
Um,
just think they dropped. Like, I thought the thing would be to just go Warner head Marsh, and then you just have to drop one of Smith or Marnus. Like, that's it. So one of them
yep.
sort of retains that sort of like anchor playing spin in the middle overs kind of role. And then was Stoinis, did he have a nickel or was he dropped for Green? I'm not too
That I
sure
can't
what
remember.
happened there,
But
but
they are competing for that same spot over there. So
yep, yep, yep.
I mean, so both Green and Stones will end up getting like kicked to the curb if Head takes that spot.
Mm. Yep. No, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Like,
Hmm.
I can say, like, pretty confidently, I think I'm going to hold my guns on South Africa. I think, like, I know that they lost to Netherlands, but they just like I
Hmm.
think with Australia, there's a glaring gap there in that middle order. Like, I think Warner in India, long term great white ball player. Head obviously been in great form
Yes.
the last couple of years. Mitch Marsh, same story. But that sort of like Smith. Obviously, Maxwell got that tennis ball left-handed century last night, but I think you can rip holes in that sort of like number 4, 5, and probably 6 in that, and like Inglis as well. I know he's gotten one good innings, but I could
Hmm.
definitely say that that's a very clear weakness. Like if you're looking at that side, that sort of number 4, probably to 7, where they've done little bits and pieces, but it's not like a consistent white ball good middle order. Whereas with South Africa, like you probably watch a lot more South African cricket, though, or probably know a little bit more about South African cricket than I do. I can't really pick out a
Not that much
weakness.
more. Yeah, you're right in saying that like everybody in the South African team is just like their batting is just on point.
Mm.
They literally just played the same game twice against England and Bangladesh, and they
Yeah,
literally put up like near enough 400, completely crushed the opposition. What is their run rate now?
it is amazing. It is plus 2.37. The next best is
Joke.
India and New Zealand, who are like either side of 1.4. So they're like a whole point
It's a joke.
ahead of the two best teams, which is just
Yeah,
insane.
yeah. That whole unit is firing, but I guess you could say I honestly think like Australia's batting just needs to be good enough. Maybe
Mm.
not. They I guess they don't have to be like uh, South Africa level. And well, last night was a very South Africa's performance. But like I really think the key is Zappa and Hazelwood. They're bowling really well, and
That's a
Zappa's
fair
fine. I
call.
think it's not really a coincidence that Australia got to 3 and 2 from 1 and 2, like at the same time that Zappa's come back into form. Um,
Mm.
it's not a coincidence at all. Zappa and Hazelwood are bowling really well. They're both excellent white poppers, obviously, but just like it's something that I think differentiates Australia and South Africa at the moment. Maybe Australia's batting isn't performing at the same level as South Africa's, but their bowling is something that's really giving them like that's going to like really be important for them going forward deeper and deeper into this tournament, starting with the next
Yep.
2 games. And it's also like with South Africa, they've had these moments, right? You sense like maybe you don't sense some kind of frailty in the batting, and fair enough, they've been batting
Mm.
throughout. Markram's got hundreds. Klassen, De Kock has been brilliant. Miller, everybody's just sort of been on. Oof, like they've been like that whole unit has turned
and
up.
and then you got Marco
Um,
Janssen at number 7 as well, who's actually playing
yeah,
above
exactly.
expectations. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And but it's just you think of like a couple of games in this World Cup where they let the Netherlands get away with it at the end. They had them on the ropes, and
Mm.
and then the Netherlands rallied late on, and then they put on a score that was good enough to defend and proved to be enough. In fact, in the end, um,
Yep.
against Bangladesh, ultimately that didn't really matter because they put on freaking 400 runs, and like you would need something truly terrible to happen to that bowling attack for
Yep.
them to not be able to defend 400. But like they failed to get that tail out.
Mm.
Mahmudullah got 100, and Bangladesh managed to rally, and obviously they lost, but they managed to put some amount of respectability on that score line. Um,
Yep.
I think of these little moments, and I think maybe there's a little bit too South Africa there with the bowling. Maybe it's not
Yep.
quite performing at the same level as the batting. Maybe that will be the letdown in a crucial game.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I think South Africa have a real opportunity, and I don't know. I'm really big on mindset and caliber, and I don't know if South Africa has come to this World Cup and the coach or their assistant coaches and the leaders have gone, we are here to win the World Cup. I know every team says, oh, we're here to win the World Cup, but if South Africa has genuinely come here with the mindset of, a couple of guys will be retiring or they won't be there next time around. We've legit got a really good white ball set up. We're here to win the World Cup. I think they have an opportunity to do the whole England thing of let's play fearless cricket, let's play on brand, keep doing that no matter what the stage is. And man, if obviously I support India, if I was playing, if India was playing South Africa, whether it's in a semi or a final, and they come in with that attitude of nothing to lose, let's play our brand, I'd genuinely be worried because I think the
hmm,
concern is from the sort of generic cricket fan of they're chokers, they've choked in all these different finals
yeah.
before. And that's a really easy thing to say. But I don't know. I do hope that they can keep going with their style of cricket, and we get to see the best of South Africa. I just hope it's not against India. So, um,
Yeah.
one thing I thought it'd be cool to sort of finish up on before we move into women's cricket, just quickly, is usually it's Shane doing the preparation and the analysis of the insights, and I kind of rock up and have my 2 cents. But what I thought is this is not analysis in any given way, but I'm always looking at the next few days' games to kind of plan my days around when the good games are on. And what I thought was really interesting, I'm going to very quickly read these out, but we've got about 10 days worth of cricket or 11 days worth of cricket non-stop of either two
Mm,
good teams playing each other, two lower ranked teams playing each other, or like a crucial clash of if one team loses, they're out
mm,
of the tournament kind of thing. So I'll read out from today, next 11 days, I'm going to rattle through these matchups really quickly. And
yeah.
yeah, you'll see that there's a lot of good cricket coming up. And then obviously the week after
Mm,
that is the last week, and then every game will mean, or
mm,
most games will mean something, right? So let's go. So today's Thursday, the 26th of October. England, Sri Lanka. England have to win here or they're cooked, they're done. Pakistan, South Africa should be a close-ish game. South Africa could really prove themselves with another big win. Australia, New Zealand is the same day as Netherlands, Bangladesh. Obviously, Australia, New Zealand is the one to look out for here. Two teams, both in the top four, could be a really interesting game. India, England, it's an India match, plus it's against England. Huge for England. If England do win against Sri Lanka, this game is then
mm,
huge for England. And India
mm.
is still going to be missing Hardik Pandya almost definitely. So it should be a little bit closer than most people think. 30th of October, Monday, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka. Next day, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Both of these games should be relatively close. After that,
Yep.
New Zealand, South Africa, which could be an epic. That could be a really good game in Pune. The next day,
Yep.
India, Sri Lanka, India game. Friday, Netherlands, Afghanistan should be close. Then after that, this
Mm.
is, oh my God, Saturday, the 4th of November, New Zealand, Pakistan into Australia, England. Holy shit, that's going to be absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And then for the
Yeah.
game of the tournament, I reckon, I know everyone would want to be, well, we were all looking out for India, Pakistan. That fizzled out a little bit.
Mm.
Game of the tournament,
Yep.
Sunday, the 5th of November, India, South Africa. That is going to be an absolute epic. And then a couple
Yeah.
more days after that, which is Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Australia, or Australia, Afghanistan is the next probably not so close or interesting game, but that is 11 days away.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'll stop there, but it is going to be an
No, yeah.
amazing week and a half of cricket coming up.
Yeah. That's perfect. Like hearing you lay it all out like that, man, it's gonna be huge. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And just like the way that you went through all those games, think about it. Like everybody could potentially be in it. What if Pakistan
Mm.
beats South Africa tomorrow? Then they have to play Bangladesh, and um, then they have to play somebody else as well in there. Um,
Yeah, I don't think that's happening.
somebody.
I've given up on
Oh, I think they
Pakistan.
just have to play Bangladesh. Yeah. So, but yeah, like basically you said. So maybe then South Africa lose, and then suddenly they're looking over their shoulders a little bit. Maybe
I'm
Pakistan
looking
get
out for my
hope.
commission from ICC for promoting the
Yeah.
World Cup so well.
Oh yeah. No,
But
but I
no,
mean, you're
awesome.
right. You're right about the England thing. Like today, if they win today, India game on Sunday becomes huge. Then they play Australia, and then just like that's two huge games back to back. Same thing with I think it's the same for New Zealand. They have a couple of massive games back to back. India have England now, then they have Sri Lanka, then they have South Africa. So that's another
Yeah.
two
And just
massive games.
one last point before we get on to women's cricket is the thing that makes these India games really interesting. I think there's two huge storylines. I read, this isn't confirmed, but I did read that Hardik Pandya is unlikely to return before the semi-finals, which is interesting for a couple of different reasons. A, it means that all the India games I think will now become slightly closer. They lose that sort of comfort zone by having Hardik Pandya there. But I think the other thing is India could potentially, there's what, 4 games to go, I think. They could potentially go in undefeated into the semi-finals. And
Yes.
now, is that a good thing? Is it not? And on the other side, if they do lose a game, the team that does beat them, let's just say South Africa would be the most likely one to beat them. That could be a huge sort of like boost in confidence for that team and
Yeah.
really sets up the finals really well. So, anyways, we will
Yeah.
move on now, but it is going to be an absolute
Yes.
mouth-watering sort of week and a half of cricket coming up, and there's only a few days left after that, which will then be all like virtual semi-finals pretty much coming up. So it's going to be an epic next few days. But anyways, we'll move on.
Sweet.
I'll let you sort of get started. I'll go check on how my WBBL Renegades are going in that time.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a good sort of midpoint of the show to transition into talking
Renegades not
about.
going well. Sorry.
Yeah, I just saw it as well.
Jesus. Sorry.
That's actually like as good a place to start as any, I think. So, well, we've had 1 week of the WBBL. It's been good fun so far. There's been well, the the shall we say the opposing forces of the WBBL so far after the first week are the Brisbane Heat and the Sydney Sixers. The Heat are 3-0. The Sixers are 0-3. They're at opposite ends of the table. And that's been like the big sort of story to start off the season, which is, oh my God, the Sixers are like, they made the final last year. They were top of the ladder. Um, Excellent team, on form. Everyone's fit and firing. But what's gone wrong for them is the story that sort of dominated the start of this season. Um, and there's like 100 different things that you could point to. Alyssa Healy's just been ruled out through injury. They're also missing Sophie Ecclestone, who was their sort of like one of the gun bowlers last year. She was injured before the tournament. Otherwise, they'd have held on to her in the draft. I think they said as much before that happened. Um, and I thought like one thing that we would do to start this portion of the show is just zero in on that. Like let's talk about Sophie Ecclestone and let's talk about what the Sixers are missing in Sophie Ecclestone. It's a big loss, I think, and it's something that was clearly weighing on their minds before the draft. There's actually something that I would like to read out from the cricket.com.au preview. Laura Jolly's sort of like talked about sort of like Charlotte Edwards spoke about it. This whole how did Ecclestone's injury affect us in the draft, etc. They were going to retain her, but she said, "Well, okay, we can't replace Sophie Ecclestone. What do we do then?" There's two schools of thought there, right? Which is, well, let's actually try and find a like for like. Let's find another left arm spinner who's going to replace this absolute gun overseas bowler, one of the leading white ball bowlers in the world. Or you try and sort of like find different players to cover the different roles that she filled, which is another valid approach. Um, and Charlotte Edwards pretty much said that these are the options that the Sixers had in front of them. And she said, it's hard to replace someone like Sophie because she bowls in all phases of the game. She bowled a lot in the power play and the surge for us, so we had to look at those options. You want to cover in the power play, and Jessica was a good option there with her stats in that phase of the game. We also wanted that left arm spin option, and with losing Nicole Bolton, we were lacking the number 6 as well. So Chloe Tryon fits with that. Having worked with her in Mumbai in the 100, it's good to know, etc., etc. So that's what the Sixers have very, very clearly outlined that, okay, we're going to try and replace Sophie Ecclestone with these two bowlers. They've recruited Jessica and Chloe Tryon. Chloe Tryon's a left arm spinner and an all rounder. Jessica is a quick bowler who bowls up front. And I thought it would be really good to actually dive into the numbers behind the approach here and see what the Sixers have to replace and whether they were right to look at these two players in particular to replace Ecclestone and Sophie Ecclestone's number. That was like a very, very long preface and a prelim to set up what I'm going to dive into right now.
Cool.
So I thought it was
Let's
a
see the
good idea to
tableau.
sort of look at. Oh yeah, like I thought it was a good idea to look at what Ecclestone brought to the Sixers last year, and sort of look at some numbers to sort of look at that. One thing that Charlotte Edwards like laser focused on in um, laser focused on the in like when talking about what we have to replace with Ecclestone is, well, she bowled for us at the start and she bowled for us in the surge a lot. And I thought it was a good idea to look at the split of deliveries bowled by all of the Sixers bowlers last season. Something interesting to look at. There's Sophie Ecclestone down here. You can see that she bowled over half her deliveries in the long middle overs. Remember, the WBBL also has the power surge now, so the mandatory power play is shortened to 4 overs, and the middle overs are like longer by a couple of overs now. And of course, uh, it's important to point out that not all middle and death overs are created equal. The power surge does change things up. Some of the later overs are played under power surge conditions. Regardless, we saw that Ecclestone, like most spinners, does tend to bowl the vast majority of her deliveries through the middle. But it's also quite interesting that she bowled nearly a quarter of her total deliveries in the first 4 overs and about 22% of her deliveries in the last four, which is, as we'll see, it's quite unusual for spinners to bowl like this. As
Mm.
you can see here, the three most regular power play bowlers for the Sixers last season were Elise Perry, Lauren Cheadle, and Sophie Ecclestone. So that's two quicks and a spinner, or one all-rounder, one pure quick, and one spinner. Most of the others came nowhere close to replicating those kinds of percentages. So you could narrow it down to like maybe Ash Gardner a little bit at the start, but it was far from guaranteed. Um, and again, in the death overs, sort of you could see here that Ash Gardner and Sophie Ecclestone and Maitland Brown bowled quite a bit at the death, alongside eventually Kate Peterson, a bit of Lauren Cheadle. Um, but I think the differences in the workload of these bowlers really stood out in the opening phase of the game, because you could see that they had three regular power play bowlers while their death overs, this bowling load was sort of spread out a little bit more. Okay, that was the case with Sixers. What happened in the case of the whole league? So these are all the bowlers who bowled at least 250 balls in the WBBL last year. It's the exact same chart, exact same set of numbers, the split between those bowlers. And I'm going to sort of try and highlight the spinners out of this lot. Um, and as you can kind of see here, there's a lot of yep, there we go. Just trying to remember who the spinners were. Yep. So these are all the spinners in the in this list. So these are the most regular bowlers in the WBBL. These are all the spinners, and you can kind of see here that if you look at the split of the workloads across the three phases of the game, Ecclestone is far from unique in that role of bowling in the power play throughout the whole course of the league. There's many bowlers who bowled a decent amount last season who also bowled a lot of their overs in the first four, whether you look at Sophie Molyneux at the Renegades, or Sam Bates at the Thunder, or Molly Strano at the Hurricanes. There's definitely equivalents to like not just equivalents, but those who like there are bowlers who have bowled a lot more proportionally at the start of the innings than did Ecclestone. I thought that was really interesting to note from like a workload and kind of trying to understand where all of these players fit into the whole grand scheme of things. I thought it was also really interesting while we were looking at this group to look at the concession of boundaries, mostly because it gave me a chance to roll out a colorful little scat plot kind of like I did last time. So down the x-axis you can see the fours conceded by the bowlers last season. Up the y-axis you can see the sixes conceded. Um, Here's Sophie Ecclestone right here, sort of way out in the right. Um, and you can see that a lot of the spinners that you saw in the last chart are kind of concentrated here. So Gemma Bosby, Sasha Maloney, Sam Bates, Alana King, Molly Strano, Hayley Matthews. Oops, there we go. So this group, this is all like concentrated here. Um, and you can sort of, as Charlotte Edwards said, you can owe a lot of this to Ecclestone bowling a lot of difficult overs, bowling like almost a quarter of her deliveries up front, bowling at the power surge, and obviously the field is up, so you're at more risk of getting hit for boundaries. So, like in terms of workload, if you look at everybody else who's sort of in this part of the chart, Ecclestone is not really a spinner at all. She's actually a fast bowler in terms of the boundaries that like in terms of like her rates of boundary concession and the lot of the difficult overs that she bowls. Whether it's Shabnam Ismail, Darcy Brown, Courtney Sipple, Amelia Kerr is sort of like close to her in that way. But there's also Lauren Cheadle, Deandra Doughton, Annabelle Sutherland, Nicola Hancock. So Ecclestone sort of mixing it in with the fast bowlers more than she is with the spinners when it comes to sort of the rates of boundary concession.
Yeah,
Some of the other, so the spinners are all parked in this side, in this half of the graph. The quicks are all parked in this half of the graph. I just thought that was something interesting to look
it's
at.
cool. It's funny, even with the men's Big Bash. Like
Yeah,
I play a lot of Super Coach and obviously like bet on games now and then. It's like it's really cool to see the numbers this way because like as fans, like we just
yeah.
wouldn't see this level of detail.
Mm. So one of the things that Charlotte Edwards also mentioned is, well, um, Jesko is somebody we looked at to replace Sophie Ecclestone at the start of the innings. So I went and did exactly that. I went and pulled Jesko and Sophie Ecclestone's numbers from the first 4 overs last season. So Kerr played for the Heat and Ecclestone played for Sixers. Let's make her name appear in the same line. So they actually both bowled a decent chunk of overs up front. They both got a few wickets. Kerr was kind of a bit more economical up front than was Ecclestone. She was a bit more of a wicket-taking threat, though, built a bit more pressure through dot balls. Um, and you can kind of see the sort of split of balls bowled, wickets taken, and runs conceded in those overs. So Ecclestone's kind of like um, the first 4 overs account for a quarter of her deliveries bowled and about a fifth of her wickets and roughly the same number of runs conceded. So we're talking about, well, somebody who's actually quite economical upfront, but who also you want to save for the power surge later in the innings. Which is why I don't think Jesko was a bad idea to replace Ecclestone, by the way.
Yeah,
She's somebody who can get wickets with a bit of shape up front, but her number one asset is keeping the runs down at the top, which you can kind of see here. Like an economy of under 5 is really, really good. Um, and I honestly think there's nothing wrong with the Sixers' approach in terms of trying to replace Kerr in that phase and trying to select by role. Um, Chloe Tryon was the other bowler that Charlotte Edwards mentioned. Um, I thought, well, hey, let's do a bit of a head-to-head for Chloe Tryon and Sophie Ecclestone. Tryon played for the Thunder last year, left arm spinner, can bat, kind
yeah,
of like the closest like for like replacement in terms of like the team dynamic and the balance and so on. Um, and their numbers were actually quite similar in many ways. The economy rates were quite similar, sort of overall. I thought that was really interesting to note. The strike rates were kind of similar as well. The obvious sort of caveat here is, well, the workloads last season were nowhere near the same.
yeah.
Um, it's maybe like I get what the Sixers are trying to do with Tryon in terms of replacing Eccleston. Um, but I would be slightly wary as when compared to Jesko because the workloads last season were just not the same. So you're
Yeah, I
making
think that one thing that I would say, sorry to butt in, I would say that with Tryon,
yeah,
like if I look at the economy dot ball percentage and strike rate, they're relatively similar. So I think it's like it at least makes sense in terms of what they're trying to do. And I guess they'll look at the first three or
exactly.
four games, see how it pans out, and then I guess they'll just have to adapt
Mhm.
from there.
Exactly, right? And you could say that, well, Tryon replacing like Eccleston with Tryon was a bit more of a leap of faith than it would be to replace Eccleston with Kerr up front. But
Mm,
you can kind of see what they're trying to do there. And honestly, it's not bad at all. Like you can kind of see the sense in what they're trying to do over there. And in
yeah,
fairness, like you can't like the like Kerr and Tryon have like they're not really they've not had the worst. Like Tryon, for example, hasn't had the worst start to the season. Couple of wickets, economy of 7.3, sort of going okay, ticking along. Kerr's got hit a little bit. I think she's going at over 8 and over at the moment, which is not great. But I think it's not been great either. That I think some of the other bowlers are Cheadle, for example, are also sort of like struggling to keep an end down. Batting's not really fired.
yeah.
So
I
I
was just
guess
oh
yeah.
sorry,
Sorry, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, so Shane, I know we mentioned my Renegades, and I checked the score and it won't go so well. I was just going to say, so obviously what you were showing on the screen there was some of our Tableau analysis. I was just going to say
Mm,
before we wind up that we had, obviously we had some success with some of the stuff that you rolled out this week. And I mentioned at the start of the pod, you can join our Discord, you can Google Wiki Linktree, obviously check out our social media where you can see some of the analysis. But I thought it'd be a good opportunity to just very quickly talk about the women's T20 portal that we rolled out. And obviously we've tagged
yes.
a whole bunch of people and they've given us some feedback, but I thought that's how we'd sort of wind up the pod and obviously we can probably share our screen next week and actually talk through the T20 portal as
Yes.
well.
Yes, that's so true. So we've been working on this for a few weeks now. It's involved like all kinds of collective effort from the data guys, from the devs, from me, etc. And we finally got like a working, functional T20 women's cricket, like T20 stats portal that just dedicated to women's cricket. At the moment, we've got 3 leagues on there for about 4 seasons of data from 2019 onwards. So we've got the WBBL, the Women's Super Smash, and the WPL, and it's all functional. It's all up and running. It's live. It's so good, and we've sort of rolled it out to people, and we've got like a really interesting sort of like enthusiastic response and a feedback there. And I think we're going to see a lot more of it on this show going forward.
No, it's gonna be awesome. I think our sort of efforts. It's weird. Like Shane, you would definitely be feeling the excitement of this. Of like you work on something for so long, and you kind of just want to do it all at once. But I think what we're
Yeah.
trying to do is obviously we started with the pod, obviously discussing WBBL analysis and sort of content around that. We've rolled out the women's T20 portal now. We've got a whole bunch of people trying it, so it's gonna be excellent to get the feedback for that. You've seen some of our analysis on social media and the Tableau. And I think our efforts will sort of just only expand week on week. And it'll be really nice to obviously get our stuff across, or get our stuff out there, and obviously discuss things, all things women's cricket, as the next few weeks go on and go into the finals of the Men's World Cup and the WBBL. But anyways, guys, we might leave it for now. As I said, we've got a bumper week of men's cricket back to back. Women's BBL is starting to take shape. It doesn't look like the Renegades, unfortunately, going to get up today. But anyways, it'll be a few good days of cricket, and yeah, we'll catch you next time. Thanks a lot.